إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن خير الحديث كتاب الله وخير الحديث حديث محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثات بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن المبذرين كانوا إخوان الشياطين وكان الشيطان لربه كفورا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Isra, ayah number 27, Indeed, the wasteful are brothers of Shaitan, and Shaitan is ever ungrateful to his Lord. Brothers and sisters, today's khutbah's topic is on how we spend our wealth. And what better time to learn about the controlling of our spending of our wealth just before the Black Friday shopping sales begin. Now, we have to understand that when it comes to controlling our wealth, from the Islam perspective, it means that it requires us to have discipline, right? We have discipline in everything we do in Islam, in our salah, in our fasting, and everything we do, there's discipline. This is what makes a Muslim. So the same goes for how we spend our wealth. We must have discipline in how we spend our wealth, right? Now, there are two terms Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses in the Quran. The first term is tabdhir, and that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about tabdhir in this ayah. And tabdhir means to buy what you do not need, right? Buying something you do not need to buy, right? Or wastage, as we say, right? And let's take, for example, a Black Friday sale, right? You're going into the store or Walmart, whatever, on Black Friday, and you start browsing around. You say, oh, this is a good deal. I've never thought about buying this before, but it's a good price. You start buying things, you start splurging, right? And this is what Usman Khan is talking about. People who just, buy things they do not even need. You don't even have a use for it. You have to sit there justifying reasons why, oh, I can do something with this, I can make use of that. You start coming up with reasons just so that you don't have a reason to buy something you do not need. Right? It's human nature. We want to be materialistic, but this is the discipline that we have to prevent ourselves from doing that. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, those who are buying what they do not need, they are the brothers of Shaitan. That's a very harsh, very strong statement. Allah is not taking this lightly, and so we should not take it lightly either. Now, tabdhir does not have to apply only to buying specific items or products off the shelf. It can also refer to how we spend our wealth, generally speaking. For example, birthday parties, graduation parties, college or high school graduation parties, etc. And subhanAllah, I have witnessed so many times people who have spent, families who have spent tens of thousands of dollars on a high school graduation party. Right? And I'm talking about Muslims here. Muslims are the worst of culprits when it comes to tabdhir. Right? And what's the reason behind this? Right? I mean, if someone wants to celebrate their graduation, all they need is a couple of friends, maybe a small dinner. That's it. Why all this massive, celebration where you're inviting the entire community, you're spending thousands on a hall and decoration pieces and all this stuff? It's the reason we Muslims do this because we want to show off. Right? I see it from both families that are both of high income as well as low income. They feel the need to show off and give all this excessive, extravagance to their spending, right? Doing all this things that are completely unnecessary. And these are the people who are the brothers of Shaitan. Those who are spending money on things that are not even necessary. There's no reason to have a graduation party or a birthday party or any of these things. These are completely unnecessary. And when we spend so much money, just think about it. All that money, the tens of thousands of dollars, can go to a much of that needs maintenance costs covered, or much of that is being newly developed and they need money to continue development, or some Muslim family that is in need. It can be still used for so many more productive things. But instead, we're choosing to spend the money on useless things. So this is what the tabdhir is. Now, the other term I was referring to, that Allah uses in the Quran, is israf. Now, tabdhir and israf go hand in hand. Now, I don't have the ayah for israf, but you can find it in Surah Furqan, Surah Al-Araf, and Allah talks about how that He does not like those who commit excess, right? He does not like those who commit to israf. Now, israf means to the beer means, like we mentioned, is buying what you do not need, right? Israf is buying things you do need, but you spend excessively, right? Extravagance, right? You need a house, you need a car, but instead of just buying, a decent house and car, you're buying excessively. You spend more out of your budget or more than you need, right? A super fancy car, very big car, a mansion, whatever. These are just simple analogies, but the point is that you're spending much more than you need to, and so and it can apply to, again, the whole Black Friday ordeal next week, right? You go into a store, maybe you need to buy a laptop, okay? You need a laptop for work or whatever, and you go into the store and you decide, I'm gonna wait till Black Friday to save some money. Well, you go into the store and all of a sudden you see all these laptops on sale, right? This one's $100 off, this one's $200 off, right? And I start thinking, oh, I can spend even more money and get a better deal. So you start spending more money for things that you don't even need it for. You don't need a super powerful laptop for something simple like email, right? But it's the human nature. We want to do that. We want to get the best. We spend more money on ourselves, right? And again, israf does not only apply to just materialistic items. Right? It can apply to, again, just like the beer, it can be applied to our general spending. Right? And one of the biggest culprits in the Muslim community for israf is weddings, right? The walima. This is one of the biggest problems Muslims have for some reason. Now, brothers and sisters, think about this. The sunnah of a walima is what? Just a few things. It's a few simple requirements. You invite your community, okay? And you invite them over for a meal. You're inviting them for a meal. Now, if you cannot afford to give them all a meal, then just dates, the kajud, that's enough. The kajud for each person at the walima is enough, right? And you need to have it segregated. I mean, the men and women should not be in the same room, right? They should not be able to see each other at the walima. That's it. These are very simple requirements. Invite your community, feed them, and if it must be, if you cannot afford a proper meal, then give them kajud. That's good enough, right? The idea is to make it as simple as possible, right? And what do we do? What do we do? I mean, you all already know this. I know most of you have been to more weddings than I have in my lifetime. And how is it spent? I mean, we see tens of thousands of dollars being spent on just the hall alone, right? Just the location, tens of thousands of dollars, right? And subhanAllah, it's just for a couple of hours for one night. You're just spending so much money for just a hall alone, right? The outfits for the bride and groom, thousands of dollars each, and only to wear it one time in your life. No one wears their wedding outfit again and again, right? Just one time in your life, and you spend thousands of dollars on just that, right? The food, nearly $10,000. Depends on how many people have. We spend so excessively. There's nothing wrong with wanting your attendees to have a decent meal, but to spend excessively, there's so much food that it's twice enough food for twice the population of the wedding. I've seen that so many times, and what ends up happening? 40, 50, 60% of the food goes to waste anyway. People stack up on their plates and only eat a little bit, and the rest goes to the garbage. SubhanAllah. I mean, this is such a, it's so bad that we don't even take this seriously. It's such a heavy sin on us that we think it's no big deal that we're wasting so much food and money and etc. And this is exactly what keeps happening. Every wedding I go to, almost every wedding I go to, this simple rules. You don't have to make it extremely extravagant. You don't need to have so much food that and it ends up going to waste. You don't need to spend so much money on the hall and the clothes. You don't need to do these things. If we follow just the sunnah, we'd be amazed at how much money we'd be saving. SubhanAllah. But it's also interesting because non-Muslim researchers have found done studies, and they found that couples that have spent more than $15,000 on weddings actually end up led to a more unhappy life, right? Some quite often leading to divorce. Whereas couples that spent less than 15,000 or less than $10,000 in the wedding, they actually have long-term happy marriages. And what's the reason behind this? The research conducted that concluded that it's because those who spent so much money on just the wedding alone, these were people who were focused on materialism, right? They only cared about the materialistic aspect. They didn't focus on the relationships. The whole point of walima is what? We're doing this for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are, marrying two families together. It's about the relationship, not about the materialism, right? And you find that weddings that, I've only been to very few weddings in my life in which people follow the sunnah, in which they keep it simple and all that. And you find that even the attendees of the wedding are more happy, right? They're getting a decent meal, but they get to focus on the groom or the bride or whatever. They get to spend time talking, they enjoy their time. But when you go to a wedding where, it's extremely extravagant and everything, people, no one's focusing on the bride or groom. They're focusing on the food because there's so much of it. They're focusing on decoration pieces because it's so extravagant. They focus on everything but the proper reasoning for the whole wedding to begin with. Right? They don't focus on the relationship. They don't focus on the families. So this is why it's so important, and even the non-Muslims have determined this, that we have to keep our walimas, our weddings, simple, right? Follow the sunnah. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu ala rasulullah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Brothers and sisters, I talked about tabdir and israf today. Now, most of us, if not all of us, including myself, are guilty of committing tabdir and israf at some point in our lives, multiple times, whatever. Right? Unless we are humans, this is human nature. Right? The idea here, though, is not to. The point of this khutbah is to have a short reminder and recognize what we are doing is wrong, or the things we've done are wrong. Because if we don't recognize that it's wrong, then we are likely to repeat it again. Right? So it's important that we must recognize what we're doing is wrong, and then also have the discipline in controlling ourselves. Whether you're talking about Black Friday shopping, or you're talking about your wedding, or your, whatever you want to, a dinner party, whatever. Ideally, we want to be disciplined with our wealth, because that's what a true Muslim does. Now, obviously, maybe some of us have, some sort of shopping list for the Black Friday, right? Even if you don't have a shopping list, this is still advice that's very important. Because excessive spending in this dunya can lead to nifaq, right? The hypocrisy of the heart. So if you want to buy things, you need something you need to buy, go ahead, whatever. I'm not here to look at someone and say that what you're doing is wrong, you shouldn't be buying this or that. You make that judgment on your own. But what's more important is whatever you're spending, or if you're not buying anything for yourself, still for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give money for the sake of Allah, right? Spend your wealth towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And interestingly enough, the word nifaq, right? If we turn the letters a little bit, it becomes infaq. Switch the noon, becomes infaq. And what is infaq? To spend for the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And infaq is one of the cures for nifaq. It's very interesting how that happens. But so ideally what we want to do is, no matter how much we spend on ourselves, we want to try our best to spend equally towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's cause. So that be the masjid or a Muslim family in need or whoever. Right? Not on ourselves, because and you always feel better when you give money for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But when we start spending on ourselves, you become more selfish, you become more greedy that way. So spending for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it cleanses us, it cleanses our money. So inshallah, we learn to protect our money and our spending. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك وصل على المؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. Ya Allah, please help strengthen our iman and make us among the mu'mineen. Ya Allah, please protect us from the fitna of the Dajjal. Ya Allah, please help us discipline, putting more discipline in our lives, controlling our spending. Ya Allah, please help ease the suffering of the Muslims around the world. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون فاذكروني أذكركم واشكروا لي ولا تكفرون. أقيموا الصلاة.